All right. Hello, everyone. Welcome once again to your Wednesday night webinar. This is Dr. Patrick McGrath, Chief Clinical Officer for OCD. Good to be here with everyone tonight. Thanks for joining. As always, we are here on Wednesday nights doing our fun webinar time, an hour together. Always a good time. I think back to Mr. Rogers. Won't you be my neighbor for an hour? And we'll have some fun here and chat about OCD and various other things and see what comes up. Of course, everything tonight is advice only. This is not therapy. Please reach out to us at OCD, though, if you are looking for a therapist. We have therapists across the country available to do teletherapy, and also in the United Kingdom and Canada and Australia as well, too. So happy to get you hooked up with someone. Go to nocd.com or download our app on Google Play or iOS and check us out. And let's see what we can do for you. We got a bunch of questions already coming in, so awesome. Hello, everybody. Good to see you all here. Let's start with Jacob. Jacob says, I'm obsessed with the fact that I might get derealized from any supplement or medicine that I take. It's been a main theme for months for me because I have anxiety and think I might get depersonalization or derealization. Well, Jacob, I can't say that you never would get that. I can make no guarantees about anything whatsoever, although I would go with the likelihood is that probably would not happen. And what I would do is I would suggest to do some exposure and response prevention therapy specifically to derealization or depersonalization concerns. You can do something that we call interoceptive exposures, and this is where we have people purposely do things that are physically uncomfortable and induce some of the symptoms that you might feel during derealization or depersonalization. So we might have somebody hyperventilate for a long time or spin in a chair and purposely get some of the feelings that they are afraid of during derealization or depersonalization to teach them that they don't actually need to be afraid of those symptoms. Those symptoms are not dangerous. They will not harm them, and that they can handle them. So that would be where I would start off with Jacob is that. Carr says, how do you deal with hyper awareness of your own body and existence? So like a somatic OCD type of thing. Then when I'm in public, I start to analyze everyone else's existence too and freak out that we're all stuck in a body of organs. Well, we're probably stuck in a body of skin being the largest organ, and then there's lots of organs inside there. Yes. So I guess we're stuck. I haven't thought of it that way personally, and now I'm going to think about that for a minute. Okay, not bothered by it. Now, that doesn't mean that it's not bothersome. I just want to say that, right? Just because it doesn't bother me doesn't mean that it isn't bothersome, because it is bothersome for you, Carr. So I want to be honoring and respectful of that. But I also want you to recognize that there are other ways of thinking about the fact that you're in a body that doesn't mean that you have to freak out about it. So I just want to put that out on the table for you to recognize that is the case, that there are absolutely other ways to consider this and think about this other than being freaked out by it. So I hope that that's helpful. And Carr, you say you're not sure if it's depersonalization or your OCD latching onto something new. You're unsure if you use exposure or grounding in this scenario. Well, I would always go with ERP. That's what I do, though. That's my bent, my nature, where I go with people. And the thing that I would do from an ERP standpoint here in this type of situation is to make sure that you are not avoiding people. You're not avoiding being around others who are stuck in these bodies of organs, right? And you're allowing yourself to recognize that even though you have that thought that you're stuck in a body of organs, it doesn't have to interfere with your life in any way whatsoever. So I can go out and be stuck in a body of organs and not be bothered by it or interfered by it, which shows that it is a possibility. And so that's where anybody working with you from an ERP perspective would want to get you to as well, too, to get you to be able to recognize that that is the case, that you can handle that situation. You don't need to run away from a scenario or a situation like that. Christopher says, hi, I have a compulsion that says that I will do my compulsion. Okay. It's almost like it feels as if I will do it, that I can't fight it anymore. Have you heard of that before? Sure. There's a lot of issues around OCD where people are afraid, what if I'm going to do it? And it feels as if they're going to do it. They're a hairline fracture away from actually doing the thing. and they absolutely have to do it. So now I'm gonna question this a little bit here, Christopher. You said I have a compulsion that says I will do my compulsion. And I'm wondering then if you actually do the compulsion, if that's the case. And is it that a compulsion that you will do your compulsion, or is it a compulsion that you, or an intrusive thought or image or urge, maybe it's more of an obsession actually, that says you might do this bad, awful, horrible thing unless you do a compulsion. So I'd want to kind of investigate that a little bit more, Christopher, just to make sure that we're right on the ideas there, because when you say I have a compulsion that says something, that sounds more like an obsession to me than a compulsion. So I would just be curious in getting some more information around that. Feel free to type some more information in here, and I may come upon it later on, and we'll get back to it again. Stephanie says, I get really obsessive about minor uncertainties around memory, like forgetting someone's name or where I heard something, and can't stop obsessing until I remember the information. Any tips? Yeah, so I would purposely call somebody the wrong name, right? And just, if they correct you, apologize and move forward, and maybe later on call them the wrong name again. And by the way, I'm sorry, I mean, your name was this, never mind. And just put yourself out there to sit with the fear, right? And recognize that you can handle that fear, right? I forget names all the time. I am not great with names. I'll be the first person to admit it. I can see someone and remember them from 15 years ago and remember even what ERP I might have done with them, but I probably couldn't tell you what their name is. I meet so many people all the time and work with so many people. And then I have this little bit of guilt feeling that, someone comes up to me and they're like, oh, Dr. McGrath, and all these kinds of things. And I'm, hi, you, how are you? And it's good to see you, that kind of thing. So if I've ever treated you and I forget your name, I apologize. I don't mean to. It just names and me have never been great friends for some reason. I don't know why. In fact, I heard a recent story. Oliver Sacks, who was a great psychiatrist and did a lot of research, and there's even been movies made about some of the work that he did. He was face blind. He could not recognize anybody's face whatsoever. If they started speaking or something like that, he could know who they were from their voice or anything like that. But he had face blindness. It's fascinating case. And there's other people out there who have this as well too, that just cannot recognize people, even if they've known them their whole life. They are blind to their facial structure for some reason. So the brain's an amazing thing, isn't it? Fascinating. Captain Cat says he's been doing all right, Dr. McGrath. Yeah, doing pretty well. Good to have you here, Cap. Riley says, hello, I'd appreciate your advice on how to handle OCD with a big change. My counselor goes on vacation next week, and these what ifs are starting to appear. I hope I'm ready. I know my ERP. Good. Now it's time to put it into place, right? Put it into practice. Allow yourself to do that ERP and to be in that discomfort, and learn that you can handle those things, and that you can handle it even if your counselor is away for the week or something. Even we need to take a vacation once in a while. I never seem to, but lots of people do, and that's okay. There's nothing wrong with that. But what and I think you've all heard me say this, but I'll say it again. I don't try to tell people that you'll be fine or things will be okay. My goal is to get people to recognize that they can handle things. And that's ultimately where we want you to go, is to recognize that you can handle it. You may not like it. It may not be comfortable, but I want you to know that you can handle it. And as long as you know that you can handle things, then you're doing a great job. That's where we want you to go, is in learning that you can handle something. Okay. So if you can get that, if you can leave with that, if you can lead with that, if you can live with that, put any word in there you want, and know that you have the ability to handle things that are uncomfortable, you've done a great job. That's where we want you to be. That's where we want you to go. Awesome work if that's the case. Okay. Captain again says, also, is it possible to have compulsions that resemble tics and is not Tourette's, like eye blinking, head jerking, some words, phrases, etc., in response to a sudden thought? While it can happen almost automatically in some circumstances, it's not uncontrollable in every situation and doesn't necessarily feel involuntary, if that makes sense. There's a great article that Charlie Mansueto wrote called Tourettic OCD, actually, where he describes exactly what you're talking about here, Captain Cass. And I would take a look at that. You can go to the International OCD Foundation and check it out on their website. They have it there. And Charlie talks about this very issue where it doesn't seem to be an actual tic, but it has a tic-like quality, but there's an obsessive compulsive disorder relationship in there as well too. And tics, by the way, are OCD related disorders. In fact, if you look in the diagnostic criteria for OCD, one of the very last questions asks if there's been history of tics that somebody's been experiencing as well too. So we know that there's this relationship between tics and OCD. There's probably some genetic aspect to it in there, or some potentially brain structure kind of experience that goes on as well too. So just keep that in mind, that is absolutely a possibility, and that it does actually make sense that you might see some kind of relationship between OCD and tics. Sean says, how does one get to, and then didn't say anything else. So Sean, if you want to finish that, I'll try to catch it later. Lily says, hello. I began a new job a few months ago. Congrats. And my OCD was latched onto the fact that I wasn't healthy enough to have a job and do well. I lived uncertainty and did well, but my manager isn't really the nicest and actually threatened my job yesterday because I made a mistake. A different manager said that I'm doing perfect and my job is not in jeopardy, but my OCD is having a field day. Any thoughts? Yes. Well, of course, Lily, your OCD would go to the worst case scenario and not the best case scenario. So your OCD would say, of course, oh, that mean manager is the one telling the truth, and that nice manager, they're just being nice, but they're lying, and they're just saying that to try to keep me calm and everything because they don't like to see people uncomfortable, but they're not really telling the truth, and I probably am going to get fired, so I should probably start looking for a new job now. But wait, what if I can't find a new job? And then, oh my gosh, I'm probably going to lose my job, and then I won't have any insurance or money, and then I'm eventually going to not be able to pay my rent, and then I'll probably get kicked out of my apartment, and I'll have to go back and live with my parents, and then everyone will laugh at me and think what a failure I am, because why would I have to live with my parents at the age that I am, and I should be able to function on my own. And then my parents are eventually going to look at me and think, what a pathetic child we actually raised. I can't believe that we actually raised this kid. And then they're going to eventually say, you know what, we're getting too old for this, you got to get out of here. And then I'm going to probably just have to live in my car, but my car will get repossessed, and then I won't have that anymore, and I'll end up homeless on the streets and eating in soup kitchens every day and sleeping on a cot in a homeless shelter, hoping that one day somebody might actually discover that I actually am a nice person and I do know how to work. But until I get up enough courage and be able to handle that, I'll just have to live the rest of my life as a homeless person. Sounds like something OCD would say. I don't know, just throwing it out there that it would potentially go that route. And our job when we have OCD is to be able to say to that, okay, yeah, all right, fine, yeah, and then go on with our life and move on and do what we need to do to live our life, and not allow that to be the last answer and the last thing that we go with, right? But if any of you have had kind of that type of mindset experience where it goes down to that worst case scenario, I'd love to hear about it too. If you think I kind of hit the nail on the head with that one potentially as well. Allison says, any tips for juggling ERP for 4 people? Myself and 3 kids, 12, 9, and 7, are all in therapy, and it's so much to juggle, trying to keep track of what everyone is supposed to be doing. I love a good job board, right? I think that a sticker chart or something like that is great for everyone. And I think that every night at dinner, if you have the opportunity to be able to sit together, you celebrate successes. One of the coolest things, I had some cousins, the Weavers, and Phil and Peggy would get everyone together every night for dinner. And Phil would say, the Weavers are leaders. What did you young Weavers do today to be good leaders? And the kids would all have to talk about something that they did that was really cool and really awesome. And so I think that something like that would be really great for people to do. And maybe that would be awesome for your family. Make sure that you work on celebrating the successes that all of you have together, and don't just focus on things that didn't go so well, but really focuses in on things that went great and awesome and well, and be proud of each other and celebrate each other and cheer on each other and throw some confetti in the air and all those kinds of things, and allow for those successes to be the things that are mostly highlighted. Jen M. Mueller says, hello, Dr. McGrath. I hope you're well. Thank you. I've had more downs than I'd like through my healing than I'd like. What is something helpful that you can tell me about this process? Well, OCD will always try to take you down. You know, OCD doesn't like people getting healthy, by the way. I just want to remind everybody that and throw that out there. OCD is not into health and people doing well. OCD is really into people not doing so great, because the more people aren't doing well, the more people might believe the OCD lie, which is, oh, I have the trick for you to do well, and that's to follow along with what I want you to do. So as long as you do everything I want you to do, all will be well and everything will be fine or okay. So, Jen, through this whole process, just recognize that those downtimes can be pulled down by OCD, trying to get you to go back into doing the OCD behavioral patterns. But you don't have to do the OCD behavioral patterns. You just don't have to do them, right? They are not there to serve you well. They are there to serve the OCD. And of course, serving OCD does not help anybody, right? Does not make anyone's life better when we serve OCD. Life gets more difficult when we serve OCD, not easier. So I hope that that's helpful. 1, 2, 3, 4 reminds me of Sesame Street. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12. Never. Okay. 1, 2, 3, 4 says, why does it take so long for my brain to function normally after I've been triggered? Well, 1, 2, 3, 4, that's something that you definitely want to practice then, right? So first of all, I don't know really what normal is. I never been a huge fan of that word anyway. But what I would want you to do is, when you find you've been triggered, those become the things that you do ERP to, so that you purposely allow for those triggers to happen again, and you allow yourself to do that habituation, inhibitory learning, and you allow for the recovery time from that to get shorter and shorter over time, because you've practiced that and you've taught yourself how to handle it so that it's not so overwhelming anymore. And I think if you do that, you won't feel so triggered anymore, and you'll actually be doing better. So give that a go. That becomes your ERP work. Work with a therapist on that, and I think they could really help you. Hannah says, any tips for trichotillomania? Suffered from it for 13 years. Trichotillomania, for those of you who aren't aware, is hair pulling. And yes, Hannah, there's a great therapy out there called habit reversal training. And by the way, we treat that at NoCD. So for those of you who might have hoarding or excoriation or skin picking, hair pulling or trichotillomania or tics or OCD, we do that here at NoCD as well too. So if you're interested, Hannah, reach out to us at nocd.com or download our app on Google Play or iOS, hit that therapist button, and let's see if we can be of assistance to you with trichotillomania. And also, just a reminder to everybody, one of the other cool things that we do is our NoCD 411 sessions, where we will provide education sessions. So if you have our friend or family member of somebody with OCD who isn't quite ready for prime time therapy yet, but you have a lot of questions about what you can do to help them or support them, or how to not give in to all the reassurance that they may want, sign up for one of our NoCD 411 sessions with us, and we'll give you some good education about how to interact with somebody who has OCD. All right. Drashti says, any tips on how to tackle false memory with harm OCD? I'm afraid I assaulted my ex-boyfriend, even though I barely have any memory of it, but it's led me to ruminate about fake scenarios for days. Yes. So here's the thing. No one is going to be able to give you enough proof that you didn't assault your ex-boyfriend, right? It's just, no one can give you enough promises or anything like that. Even if you called your ex-boyfriend and asked him if it was the case that you assaulted him and he said no, you would still wonder, well, maybe he's just saying that, and maybe he's working up a case against me and he's lying and all those kinds of things. So, Drashti, this is not about finding the truth out if you actually did assault your ex-boyfriend, which probably sounds weird, because wouldn't all of us like to know if we actually assaulted someone? But I will tell you this, The only people that come to me wondering if they've assaulted someone and are afraid, what if I don't remember that I did, are people with obsessive compulsive disorder. People who actually assault people don't come to me out of fear, what if I did it? They're just like, oh yeah, I did it. I did assault that person. So this falls in that realm of OCD, what if kind of experiences. And as we've talked about here before, but I'm happy to review a little bit now again, you can't get enough reassurance to answer your what if questions, right? There will always be one more yeah, but what if than there is answer to anything for you. So I just want to remind you of that, Drashti, that we're not here to try to convince you that you did not assault your ex-boyfriend, because I could never do that. I don't know you. I don't know your ex-boyfriend. I wasn't there. I can give you no guarantee of the fact. And you might say, well, here's what I remember. And you'll give me the whole memory of the whole experience. And then you say, now knowing that, do you think I could have done it? Right. And I'll say, I don't know. You know, is, if you're looking for, is it possible? Sure. You know, it's possible. If you're looking for, is it probable? You know, don't forget that OCD mixes possibility and probability and makes them equal to each other. So in the world of OCD, if something is possible, it is 100% probable, right? And that's the lie again. That's one of the rubs that you get from OCD is this, oh, wait a minute. Hold on a second. We appear to have a possibility. Well, you know what that means. We therefore have a 100% probability that this has occurred, right? So since it is a possibility, right, that I could, you all know what's coming, leave this webinar within the next few minutes, go across the street with a Molotov cocktail, throw it at my neighbor Dave's house, setting it on fire, going into the middle of the street, then pooping in a bag, lighting it on fire, putting it in front of my neighbor Josh's door, ringing the doorbell. He comes out, sees the bag on fire, stomps on it, and it's full of poop. And so he gets flaming poop on his shoe, and I laugh at him. And then I come back to my house, shoot a couple of geese that are flying over it, and then come back in here and do the webinar. Now, that is a possibility. And in the world of OCD, it is therefore a 100% probability, because why would I think something so detailed like that if I hadn't actually done it? So now, Drashti, if I take your kind of OCD advice, right, I should call the police on myself, or all of you should be calling the police right now and say, hey, this webinar guy just said that he's going to take a Molotov cocktail and throw it at his neighbor's house. Even though I've said that for 2 years now. And last time I checked, Dave's house is still there. But hey, this week could be the week, right? One never knows. It is a possibility, right? I would go with a low probability, but it is a possibility. Now, here's the thing that OCD hates. Wait a minute, you can't give me a guarantee that I didn't assault my boyfriend? What? But that's what I want. I just want that. Could you please just give me that, and then everything will be fine and okay, and I'll go away. It'll all be well. Parentheses. My nickname is the doubting disorder. So no matter what answer you give me, I will doubt it. And therefore, since I will doubt it, I won't believe it. And therefore, you will have this doubt for the rest of your life, because I'll never believe any answer that you actually give me. Close parentheses. So, Drashti, again, it's not about anyone convincing you didn't do it. It's about learning to live with the fact that that's what your OCD tells you, but you don't have to listen to your OCD, and you don't have to pay attention to it. And you don't have to do anything it wants you to do. Sophia says, any tips for dealing with real event OCD and how to move forward with knowing you've done bad things? Sophia, we've all done bad things likely. I mean, I've shared on here, and I will share again that I beat the utter crap out of someone in my 20s because they attacked my family. And when my mom got knocked down, I went into like medieval battle rage mode, and I just beat the heck out of this person until the police came and showed up and were able to pull me off of him. So Sophia, we can say that that's a bad thing, that I lost control and I just beat this person endlessly and mercilessly. So now that I have a real event, and I've admitted to all of you that I've done that, it's happened. It's a true thing. I still have moved forward with my life and have become a psychologist and have helped, I believe, tons and tons of people. I think I do a pretty good job at it, even though I have this thing in my past that I have done. So, Sophia, according to you, what am I doing wrong, right? Am I deluding myself? And am I supposed to spend the rest of my life feeling bad about the fact that I did this thing and that I hurt this person who did hurt family members of mine physically? But I could have stopped, I suppose. But when I was in the, like I said, medieval battle rage mode, there wasn't a lot of logical thinking going on. There was just, oh, you hit my mom. Well, you now have to be punished, and that's kind of all that was going on. Now I live with that, right? I did that. I live with that. In some ways, it was an amazing learning experience to see what adrenaline can do and everything like that. But Sophia, maybe I'm missing something here in that I've had this real event and I haven't punished myself enough. So maybe we end the webinar now and I start trying to find the person to atone for the fact that maybe I took it a little too far. Maybe I hit them one too many times. When people from the line were yelling at me to stop, that maybe I should have just actually listened to them and stopped the experience. Or I could take what happened afterwards, where the police and everybody in line were shaking my hand saying, excellent job. You protected your family. You did exactly what you're supposed to do. And the cops even made this guy come over and apologize to me and my family for having started the whole thing. And they asked me, what do you want us to do with him? Because we'll take him in right now because he started the whole process. So when 4 police officers shake your hand for protecting the family, even though you were beating somebody, what happened then, right? I mean, what does that say? Now that's really potentially confusing, right? Or we've all done things that we're not proud of. And people without OCD don't ruminate on them the way that people with OCD do. And therefore, is the problem that we've done some bad things, or is the problem the way that the OCD looks at the fact that we've done some bad things? And I'm going to go with the second one. I'm going to go with that. It's the OCD looking at the fact that we've done bad things and holding us up to a standard that says, you were never actually allowed to ever do something bad, and you need to be punished over the fact that you did something bad because that was never supposed to happen. Okay. Kayla says, how do you feel about rumination ERP? Don't know much about it, so hard to really answer. Can't really say very much there. Howard asks, if you want to try an intensive outpatient program, do you have any hospitals or programs that you recommend? Thank you, my friend. I mean, I'm a little biased that I started the program at Alexian Brothers Behavioral Health Hospital in the Chicago area, and it's still going on. So I've always been a fan of that program because I can tell you how the staff was trained and what they do, because I started it almost 17 years ago now, and it's still going on. Even though I'm here at OCD, I still keep a relationship over there and know that they're still doing great work. But you can also look on the International OCD Foundation website, and you will find listings of intensive programs and partial programs and residential programs as well on the International OCD Foundation website too. Christina says, it's been a rough couple of weeks. Thank you for doing these. Well, absolutely, Christina. Happy to do them. Absolutely. And sorry, it's been a rough couple of weeks, but remember, keep pushing through. Do that ERP. You got this. We believe in you. 1234 again says, Why can't we act rationally whenever we are about to make a compulsion? Why is it so automatic? Uh, Usually because it's to neutralize an emotion, right, that's going on, right? You have that obsession, and it creates a very uncomfortable experience for you, right? And the compulsion alleviates that, right? And then you believe also that it also neutralizes the chance of whatever's going to happen in the obsession as well too. But there is that neutralization of that fight, flight, or freeze response. So if I have an intrusive thought or image or urge and I really don't like it, and I'm like, oh, and I just feel awful about it, and I do the compulsion, and then I feel better, it's like, oh yeah, okay. Well, remember, emotions are not logical. Emotions are not rational. And so if you have something that you can do like a compulsion that can alleviate all that discomfort like that, and just bam, it's gone, you can understand why people would go and do it, because it's the immediately gratifying experience. And that's what we're looking for, right? Many of us are looking for that immediately gratifying experience. What feels good right now in the short term versus what's going to be best for me in the long run. And we want to help people learn that they can handle doing things that are uncomfortable in the short term. And that will be the thing that leads them to long-term progress. And so that's what we ultimately want people to work toward, is that. Kayla also says, thanks for the lives. Appreciate it. Rowan says, I hope you're well, Dr. McGrath. Thank you. I've been doing ERP and improving somewhat, but lately I've been avoiding tasks because I dread dealing with trying to avoid compulsions. Avoidance to avoid. Yes. So, Rowan, that's the hard part, right? Isn't it? Here's what I want you to keep in mind, though. Every day that you avoid doing your ERP work, right? And remember, it's not just exposures, it's response prevention. That's the key component in all of this. We are all exposed to things all the time, but we don't always do response prevention. So the key piece is to making sure that we do good response prevention. And that's the hard part of ERP, is the response prevention part. So every day that you don't do the response prevention, you're, without maybe saying it out loud, you're saying, is another day that I want OCD to stick around and get stronger. Right. And that's another one of those lies of OCD. Says, oh, just today, just go ahead and do that compulsion, and it'll feel fine and everything and all that. And well, imagine someone who's trying to be sober, but says, I've tried to be sober every day, but there's a few days that if it crosses a certain threshold, I just have to drink. Would you say, great idea, or understand? Yeah, that's the thing to do. No, you would want somebody to every day go through the experience of not drinking as a way to get through the day. And we want you to go through every day not doing compulsions as the way to get through the day. We want you to go through every day doing response prevention. Okay. The nice DD77 says, D Patrick, that's me, how to deal with emotional contamination subtypes OCD. So, in similar kinds of ways, if there's a person that you think is contaminated, but it's not a physical, it's like if I walk past them, I'll get their cooties, their emotional cooties or whatever, or you don't like to watch certain programs that have certain themes because you think that it'll really be bothersome to you, and you'll have to deal with that in your head and it won't be able to go away, or whatever it may be, right? Whatever it may be. I'd want you to just purposely put yourself into those situations that feel emotionally contaminating, and do response prevention, not do the compulsion to neutralize the whatever it is that is emotionally contaminating, but allow it to be there and allow it to recognize that emotional contamination is a product of obsessive compulsive disorder. Because I, as someone who doesn't have OCD, could go and do probably the exact same thing that you do and not feel emotionally contaminated by it. And again, I'm not saying that to say, haha, I don't have it, you do. I'm saying that to show you that your OCD is what's going to pick up on this notion that there is such a thing as emotional contamination. If there was truly emotional contamination, you wouldn't have to have OCD to experience it. Everybody in the world would experience emotional contamination. It wouldn't be a product of obsessive compulsive disorder. Okay. So emotional contamination is a product of OCD, and therefore we know what to do to treat it, which is to do exposure and response prevention therapy. And that's how you deal with it, just like you would with any other kind of OCD. You make sure that you do really good ERP. Allie says they've been doing OCD therapy and love their therapist. Awesome. But today's been tough with some existential OCD. You're scared of having to think forever, which leads you to obsessing over what are thoughts and overanalyzing everything you do. So annoying. If you have any words of encouragement, you'd love. So, well, let's just be honest. You will be thinking for a very long time, right? I believe up until the day you die, you will be thinking, right? So let's all just kind of sit here and acknowledge for a moment something. We're going to go back to the other one. We are trapped in a bag of organs and we'll be thinking until we die. Let's just all sit with that for a moment. I'm in a bag of organs and I will think till I die. All right. Now, what should bother me about that? And you may say, well, nothing should bother you about that. I'll go, good. A lesson number one, you've recognized the should in there. So congratulations. But then you might say, but it does bother me. It annoys me. Okay, great. What is it that's annoying about that? What is it that bothers you about that? Well, and I'm going to go with what you say here. Well, then I'll be overanalyzing everything I do and thinking, and it's so annoying. Okay, so overanalyzing sounds like maybe the compulsion that's going on. And if that's the case, there's where we need to put in some response prevention. How can we get you to do certain things without overanalyzing them? How can we get you to do things by just doing them? I'll give you an example. One time I was working with somebody, this was years ago, and when she would go shopping, she would overanalyze every item that she was going to buy. She'd pick it up, she'd look at it, she'd look at everyone. If she needed an orange, she would literally look at every single orange that was in the display and try to find the most perfect orange that she could possibly find. And it could take her an hour just to pick an orange, right? And so shopping was an all-day affair for this person. So I said to her, I'm going to go shopping with you. So I met her at the store. And I had a stopwatch. I said, all right, you get 30 seconds per item. If at the end of 30 seconds you don't pick, I will pick. And believe me, you don't want the orange I'm going to pick. I'm going to pick the rottiest, dirtiest, squeeziest, leakiest orange in the whole bin and put it in your cart, and that's the one you're going to buy. And they were like, ah! Right? But guess what? They shopped really fast that day because they didn't want that to happen. What did they learn? They didn't have to overanalyze everything. They could go with good enough, right? And in some of these situations where we spend so much time overanalyzing everything that we do and that we think about and everything, we're usually searching for, where did we screw up? Where did we go wrong? Where did we make a mistake? And then, of course, you have to follow that with, now, how do I have to punish myself for having screwed up and made that mistake and done that wrong thing so that I'll never again do that wrong thing and I'll never again goof up and make a mistake, right? And so that's just the thing that's probably just going to keep playing over and over and over and over in your head. And you want to ultimately get somebody to recognize that I could analyze this for the rest of my life. Or I could be okay with the notion that I'm never going to actually figure this out. And I'm going to have to just accept that and move on. And that's where we really want to go. How can we get people to move on? How can we get people to accept and move on? That's what we want, right? That's where we want to go. Okay. Grace says, having intrusive paranoid thoughts that you think someone schizophrenic may have. When these happen, it's hard to tell if you believe them but the thought that you could is scary. How to respond. So we know that one of the themes that we see a lot in people with OCD is, what if I have schizophrenia, right? What if I have some kind of psychosis or something along those lines? Now, here's what I want you to do, Grace. I want you to live the life that you want to live, even if these kinds of thoughts pop into your head, right? Now that may sound difficult. I understand that. And my goal is that you do it, though. I really want you to give it a go, give it a try here, give the old college try. I want you, Grace, to recognize that you can have the strangest, oddest thoughts in the world, and they don't have to mean anything whatsoever, right? OCD doesn't like that, though. OCD says, oh no, he's an idiot. Because, Grace, you know everything that pops in your head must have meaning and truth to it. Otherwise, Grace, why would you have thought it? Why would this thing have popped into your head if you somehow didn't want it to be there, or didn't like it, or didn't think a little bit that you were hoping for it to happen, or something along those lines? Now, Grace, I've shared with you my thought earlier about the Molotov cocktail, but I can also share with all of you that I have absorbed 22 years of intrusive thoughts from people that I have treated. And there's not much I do in life at all without having intrusive thoughts, many of which go to pretty amazing extremes of things. Like I can't drive past a cemetery without thinking of digging up dead bodies, because I treated somebody who had a fear of what if they were to do that. I can't walk anywhere without thinking about pushing people into oncoming trains, or downstairs, or into traffic, or anything like that. I can't drive without seeing someone on a bicycle or crossing the street and assigning a point system to them, wondering if I ran them over, how many points I would get if I actually were to take them out. Uh, there's not much I do, Grace, in my day-to-day life that doesn't have an associated intrusive thought that comes along with it, some of which can sound very paranoid if I were to share all of them with you. Grace, how much should I worry about the fact that I have schizophrenia? How much time must I spend wondering if it is schizophrenia, and checking and checking and checking to see if that's the case? Or, Grace, can I let that go? Can I move on from that? And can I just be like, okay, there's that thought. There's that thing. And do I have to believe every single thing that pops into my head? Though my OCD would like me to, and tells me to, and tells me that it's very important to do so, do I actually have to do that? I'll ask you, Grace, to think about that, okay? I'll ask you to consider that and wonder about that. Is it necessary? Is it absolutely necessary for me to believe everything that pops into my head? Or are all of us in the world subject to odd, strange, weird, maybe blasphemous, maybe perverse, maybe even paranoid type of thinking now and then? And it's just part of the normal, natural human condition. Remember, OCD does not like the normal, natural human condition. OCD says we should not experience the normal, natural human condition. We should be better than the normal, natural human condition. Okay? So just keep that in mind. Jeanette says, I'm in ERP therapy, and while it has helped tremendously, you're still obsessed with fear of dying. I think about it all the time. What can I do to rid myself of this horrid, intrusive thought? Well, I would first wonder, Jeanette, what it is that you're afraid of while dying, right? So let's talk about dying for a moment. Is it that you'll be alone? Is it that you're not sure about an afterlife, if there is or isn't one, or you're not sure if you are religious, you've fulfilled all the needs of your religion to be able to have the life after death that you would want. Uh, I'm a big fan of a quote that I heard, and I do love this one. And excuse me, as the Dawkins, Richard Dawkins said it. Dawkins said, as far as we know, the universe is 14.5 billion years old. Um, I have no idea what happened to me in the 14.5 billion years before I was born. Why do I need to worry about whatever happens after I'm gone and the 14.5 ensuing billion years after I'm gone? Right. And I've always loved that quote. Um, Jeanette, I'm curious. I would want to know, if I was doing therapy with you, right? What is there to be afraid of dying? Right? And I would want to develop ERP around those fears specifically, um, it to the degree that we can, right? I mean, you may say, well, what if there's just nothing? But nobody knows what nothing is, right? Because none of us have ever experienced nothing, because there's always something like oxygen or gases or things of that nature. So none of us have experienced nothing. Maybe that's it. I don't know what nothing would be, and therefore I'm afraid of it. And because if we don't know what something is, OCD doesn't rally toward what's the best thing that could happen. It rallies towards what's the worst thing that could happen. And so uh, maybe that's where you're at, right? Is that kind of fear as well too. So I would work with your therapist on where you're going with all the worst case scenarios that you have about dying, and allow yourself to recognize that, um, if there's an attempt that you're making to try to figure out what's going to happen and how you're going to handle it, what the futility of that experience actually will be, right? Because it just isn't going to get you anywhere that you would want to go. Troy says, "Hey doc, hey, you've had bad anxiety ever since you had COVID 20 days ago. You're worried about COVID brain damage and it potentially making your OCD worse. I don't know. I've been terrified." Well, Troy, COVID is a stressor, of course, and we do know this, that stressors can increase the likelihood of OCD or make OCD run a bit more rampant. And it's not uncommon, like in kids, to see things like getting a strep infection or stuff can make anxiety and OCD potentially worse for people as well too. So who knows with COVID if maybe there would be a little bit of a relationship to somewhere in there. But here's the deal, Troy. If you've been working with a therapist, this is the time to double down on your ERP work, right? So you've had a stressor, fine. Now, what are you going to do about it to help yourself alleviate that stressor? You're going to do really good ERP, Troy. That's what I want you to do. Do that really, really great ERP, right? Put yourself out there and do the ERP that you need to do to face those fears. Bush Ranger says, "Hey, Dr. McGrath, is there a depression OCD theme? It confuses me when we can also have comorbid depression and OCD." So here's how I look at depression and OCD. If you think about it, OCD basically says these things might be bad, and they're probably things that you maybe once enjoyed at some point in time. So you stop doing things that you once enjoyed or that you had pleasure from because of OCD out of fears of those things. Fine. Then there's the notion of depression, which, if you look at the definition of depression, you need one of two things. You need to either feel depressed or have loss of interest or pleasure in things that you once enjoyed. Okay. Well, didn't we just talk about losing interest or pleasure in doing things that you once enjoyed because of OCD? So, what if OCD comes along, you stop doing things that were rewarding to you, and in not doing the rewarding things anymore, you get depressed because you're not getting the rewards for those things? You can see how these two things can really feed off of each other. And that, to me, is one of the things that I really work on with people, is this notion of depression can follow OCD, right? And sometimes people say, well, we got to treat the depression first. And there may be times that you do, right? If somebody's feeling really, really just zero energy whatsoever to do anything, or they're even suicidal, yes, we would want to deal with the depression first. But for the most part, I try to really deal with the OCD first for people and get them to really work on that. And in doing so, in really working on the OCD, then I've seen tons of people have an alleviation of the depression that they were experiencing because they started to really work on the OCD. Tokney says, what if I was always good with names, but I just forget the name of a person I go out with? Boy, that's going to happen once in a while because our brains are not perfect. And so we have to allow ourselves a bit of grace to recognize that we're never going to be perfect with things. And that's okay. 1, 2, 3, 4. How can I stop beating myself up after making a compulsion that worsened my obsession? Very simple. Go and undo the compulsion and sit and live with the discomfort of it and allow it to fade on its own and do that habituation. And every time that you find yourself giving into a compulsion, say, oh, wait a minute, gave into a compulsion there. Let me go now and undo that. So let's say that, you touch something and you think it's dirty. And so you blow on your hands. You're like, wait a minute, that's a compulsion. I'm trying to blow the germs off. So you go back and you re-dirty your hands again. And now you don't blow on your hands. And you don't live in the having done a compulsion, you live in the habituation experience. You live in the response prevention. And that might be the thing that you want to do. Smiley, yes. Hey, I am so happy to see you, Dr. McGrath. Well, I'm so happy you're here, Smiley. You've been doing great doing ERP on your own and told your family to stop giving you reassurance. Congratulations, Smiley. Keep it up. That is awesome. Sam says, is there a time to be worried about harm, OCD, intrusive thoughts? I imagine terrible things and feel like I'm waiting to snap and become a serial killer. You and everyone else with that type of OCD who tells me the exact same thing as well. As Carl once said over a year ago on this webinar is either the largest collection of potential serial killers and awful, horrible people and rapists and murderers in the entire world, or it's just a large gathering of people with obsessive compulsive disorder. And I'm going to go with it's a large gathering of people with obsessive compulsive disorder. Otherwise, Sam, here's what we would see on the news every day. Attention all ships at sea and all the men and women in the armed forces and everything else. Another person with OCD actually goes and does the thing they've been afraid of for so long and finally snapped, and here it is again. Now, Sam, when was the last time you saw that as the lead story on the news or the headline on the newspaper? If you can find one for me, anyone, send it to me. I will send you $1. Okay. So that's all I need. Just send me that is the lead story on something. Person with OCD actually goes and does the thing they've been so afraid of doing for so long. I'll never get it, but you can keep looking for it if you want. Cody says, what would be your tips for a person who was just diagnosed? You've been diagnosed with ADHD. Turns out it was OCD. Happens a lot, Cody. A lot of people were diagnosed with ADHD, but it was OCD. And the reason they weren't paying attention to things is because they were doing a lot of mental compulsions. And so people assumed, well, you're just not paying attention. You must have OCD or you must have ADHD. So let's give you stimulant drugs. And then it got worse. And let's give you more stimulants. And it got worse. And then finally people realized, oh, wait a minute, maybe there's something else going on. So Cody, here's the deal. Do good ERP, Cody. Find yourself a great ERP therapist and do really good ERP. That's the thing that's going to help you the most, Cody. That's the stuff that you're going to really want to do. Okay. Work on that, Cody. Best of luck. Smiley says to Sam, I have harm OCD and always sit with the thoughts and you've never acted on them. Oh, awesome. All right. 1, 2, 3, 4. We've had a couple from you. I'm going to move on to a few other people. Let's see. Interesting to know that. OCD and tics. Wendy liked our 8-hour marathon OCD webinar. Thanks for all the great therapists hosting it. You found it helpful and humorous. Oh, that's wonderful. Andrew asks, are derealization and depersonalization common side effects with certain forms of OCD? You have sexual orientation and transgender OCD, so you were thinking this may be since these forms focus on your identity. I wouldn't say that they're common side effects, but here's what we know. Panic symptoms, which derealization and depersonalization are, panic symptoms, can fall into this realm of things. And, can be used by OCD as a way to get people to do compulsions, because there's plenty of people who do a compulsion because they're afraid if they don't do the compulsion, they're going to have a panic attack, and the panic attack is going to be all overwhelming and awful and horrible for them to deal with. So therefore they do the compulsion. So I'm used to hearing a lot of people say stuff like this, who talk about this notion that if I don't do my compulsion, something bad or awful horrible is going to happen, like a panic attack. So I have to do the compulsion to stop the panic attack, right? And one of your panic attack symptoms might be derealization or depersonalization. And that might just be for you, Andrew, what's going on. It's not necessarily that it's linked to an identity kind of OCD, but it is the thing that your brain has picked. So let's see, we talked about depression, so I think I gave an answer to that similar. Sean says, having tough time doing things 3 or 13 times. If I drive out of my gate and then come back in and then leave, it's 3 times. And I can't do that, so I'll go in and out till it's 5 and 4, etc. Debilitating. Well, can't or won't, Sean, I want to ask you, because Sean, if you tell me that you can't do it, then there's nothing that I can do to help you. Can't means that you lack the ability to do something. And Sean, if you lack the ability to do it, there's nothing that I can do for you. If, however, Sean, you won't do it because it's uncomfortable, I can be amazingly helpful to you then, Sean, and have you purposely doing things in the number of 3 or 13 to allow yourself to learn that you can handle that. That's ultimately what we want people to do, is to learn that they can handle things. You don't have to like it. It doesn't have to be comfortable. You have to know that you can handle it. And that's ultimately where we want you to go, Sean. So I would work, Sean, with a therapist who's going to help you work toward doing things in the number of 3 or 13 so that you can learn that you can handle doing that, and that it doesn't have to feel so awful or horrible or overwhelming. Okay. Elizabeth says, my fiance said I have had these harm OCD thoughts for so long, I wouldn't act on them now. What scares me is I had COVID and I feel like it made me so much worse. You had COVID in May. Okay. But does COVID then turn people into, oh, now things I wouldn't have done, now I would have done because I had COVID, would become the question that I would ask. And of course, your OCD is going to go, well, let's ponder that for the next 757 hours and see where we go with it. Right. And OCD is going to want you to go and investigate that a whole ton. But do you actually have to do anything that OCD wants you to do? I would contend, no, you do not. I have built an entire career out of trying to get people not to do anything that OCD wants them to do, because OCD is a big poopy head as far as I'm concerned. And OCD has never given great advice to anybody, because if OCD did give great advice to people, my job would be the opposite of what it is. And my job would be to go around to people and go, hey, do you have OCD? No? Oh, well, come on over. Let me give it to you, because you know what? You're really missing out. You're missing out on some great internal dialogue that's going to just torture you for the rest of your life in order to make sure that you don't do anything bad or wrong. So come on over. Let me give you some of this OCD. You're going to love it. You're going to hate it. You're going to love it. You're going to hate it. You're going to love it. You're going to hate it. And that's just what your life's going to be like, right? There's a part of you that's going to be like, oh man, it's a good thing I have this OCD or else bad things would have happened. There's another part of you that be like, God, this sucks. I wish I didn't have this anymore. It would be ridiculous if that was my job, to give people OCD, right? So I'm not going to go do that. I'm going to keep doing what I do, which is to help people not have OCD. So in that reminder, everyone, thanks for listening to the Wednesday night webinar here, brought to you by NoCD. NoCD, a downloadable app you get through Google Play or iOS. Check us out for help with hoarding, OCD, trichotillomania, excoriation, tics. And we do NoCD 411 education sessions too. So if you have friends or family members who have OCD and you want to know about OCD, we are here to help you with those as well too. Please reach out to us. Let us see what we can do to help you. We work with people in the US and in Canada and the UK and Australia. Make it a great night, everyone. Thanks for being here. We'll see you again next week. Be well.